All right, we're live on the air at the Astro Imaging channel. Today we're doing a Q&A session. We have some other members submitted some data to us, and I think we're just going to take a look at it and kind of go through it. One of the members actually just joined the call, Robert, and the other member posts as Keith LT on cloudy nights. And I took a quick peek at the data, and we're going to get two different types, and I'll go into that a little bit when I'm talking. And we're running, for those of you that are live, and remember, we do this live every Sunday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You're welcome to join along, friend us on Google+, the Astro Imaging channel, and or circle us or whatever, and we'll get you in. You can also go to Q&A, or you can watch from YouTube. But like I was saying, we got some data today, and everybody's in the room. Today's format is going to be a little bit different. We're going to try and get a little bit more interaction. We have gotten here's Keith. Keith just joined the call, and Keith actually provided the data, some of the data for tonight. So today's format, feel a little bit more free to speak out. If you want to interrupt me, feel free to. If you think I'm doing something wrong, feel free to. You can even take over the screen, and I can give you an opportunity to do that. But let's jump right in, and I just want to check out. There you go. I see Alex is explaining a little bit about it, so I'm going to jump right in to the initial data. Keith, are you? Can you unmute yourself, Keith? I don't know if you're available to talk or if you're unavailable. I know you were on call, you said. I don't see you unmuted, so I will just keep going along until if we hear you or not. If you can chat or anything like that, you're welcome to. Just want to make sure. I believe right now you guys are looking at my Photoshop screen. You can jump in and say no if you can't see it. This is Keith's data. Keith's data came from Keith's data is of M8 and M20, the Trifid and the Lagoon Nebula. Keith acquired it with a William Optics GT81. It's an 80mm f5.9. He did not use a flattener. He used an ADX mount, Canon 450D, so it's a DSLR. And he said chilled and stabilized at 46 degrees. So I don't know if that means he has a DSLR cooler, but either way, 46 degrees isn't that warm, so I'll assume he's a little bit more of a northern guy as opposed to a southern guy, but I might be wrong on that. Unguided 60 exposures at 50 seconds, half at ISO 400, half at ISO 800. Backyard EOS DSS. No darks, flats, or bias frames. Internal long exposure noise reduction set on. So Keith is using ICNR. I don't want to go into too much stuff because I might almost feel like I'm lecturing, but I will say I still prefer to take lots and lots of darks, whether it be in the fridge or in the wherever it may be. Just match them up to temperature. I feel like ICNR wastes clear sky time. In fact, I think a strong argument could be said that if you didn't take darks and you spent all that time just shooting numerous frames of clear sky time and dithering, I think that would still turn out a little bit better. Because with ICNR, you still can only remove one dark. So it does an okay job, but it may not do a great job. But that's about all I'm going to say on that. So I'm going to really jump right in. I did play with this a little bit earlier, but I don't have any of my any of the other data around. So first, I just want to take a look at the data. I'm going to put just a heavy stretch on it. just to get what I can see. Now, I always keep that line relatively flat. That prevents your stars from blowing out. Pretty important, especially early on. As I go in one, I can see what's there, and I have, again, my black pointer tool set to 27, 27, 27. It could be 30, 30, 30. It's whatever you choose. And I'm just going to hit what I know is a dark area, and I see a dark area up here, and I like the way 27, 27, 27 looks color-wise on my background, so that's going to do it for me. I'm actually going to go, and I use a lot of shortcuts again. Same thing I said last week. Control M gets you to curves. I don't have enough patience to not use shortcuts, I guess you'd say. So this is just, I'm not really going to stretch like this. I have to take it up more. But you can see what's going on here with Keith's data. First of all, he told me no flattener, so I can see the elongation of the stars out along the perimeter. That's just typical because without that additional glass correcting the outside of the field, there isn't much to prevent that from happening. But you can see if I go in, the stars are pretty round. A little bit of elongation, but again, he's doing 60 seconds unguided. So that's probably, if I were going unguided, that's probably about where I'd push it to. 60 seconds is kind of good. I don't know. And I'm guessing that's about where his histogram, where he wanted his histogram to be, and that's probably what determined that. So I'm just going to cancel out of that because I want to put a little bit better. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, you notice that up in one corner the stars are actually pretty solid, or at least as far as I could tell from my little screen here. But up in the other corner they weren't.
Let's see. I did not notice that, but I will. I actually, yes, they are more elongated on the left side.
So we need to look into flattening that field, meaning correcting the tilt, perhaps.
Yes, yes, and there's actually something else going on that we'll see a little bit further that I think is related to that, and I think it probably does imply more tilt. So if Keith is listening, I think you should look for something mechanical in your setup, whether it be the focuser flexing a little bit. The William Optics GTO is a nice scope. My William Optics 66, the focuser flexes a little bit, so that might be someplace to look. It is a
Adam, have the rest of you guys lost the desktop? I'm not getting the desktop.
Let me see.
Well, I was seeing it, but now it's black.
See if I could get back in.
There we go. I'm back. And Robert has added a comment that it's either the focuser or the chip mod may have been the chip mod may not have been flat.
I think I got my mic working. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's Robert.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. What I was referring to on that is that I know when I modified my T3, I didn't have the chip set flat enough, so it would show an elongation because I have a William Optics 81 GTF also. So.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get myself back into Photoshop. I was looking at.
So you think it might be the camera mod when the sensor was put back in? Those little shims might have needed to be adjusted. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the possibility.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think. He has the 450D, which is what? Is that the T3? No. 450D is which camera? I can never tell the.
It's the XSI.
It's the XSI?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I know that one of the I want to say the T3 the T3i has a different type of sensor mount that's a little bit more difficult to install the sensor in. I didn't think the XSI had the same difficulty, but it is something to look into. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm just looking back at my notes. Oh, his camera's unmodified. So this is the sensor the way it came. This is the sensor the way it came from Canon. So
Yeah, it's probably the flux and the focuser then. Yeah, because I've
yeah,
noticed that also on mine.
yeah. So probably focuser flex. I think a flattener would tell you a little bit more. But make sure all of your well, I'm not going to say make sure all of your adapters are screw in, but make sure all of your adapters are tight. And the really you kind of want to take care of this stuff because eventually you really want better quality data.
Adam, can I step in for a second there, Adam?
Go right ahead.
The focuser on almost all of the old William Optics scopes up until that William Optics Star 71 was considered pretty suboptimal, and I think it's not uncommon at all to have tilt from that focuser, to have it be out of collimation with your lenses. So it wouldn't be shocking at all if that's the issue.
Does it have grub screws or something that you can use to adjust?
Does it? I'm sorry. Does it have what?
Like little grub screws, like adjustment screws that you could use to adjust the tilt?
You know that in my experience with my William Optics, the tilt, the focuser just isn't up to the task.
Right.
It just can't hold the weight at all. Like it literally the.
Sag, not actual to the tilt of the focuser.
Oh yes, sag. I mean, it could be tilt, but I think at least what, and I'm sorry, I don't know who just previously interrupted, but at least what he was saying was that they're suboptimal because of that flex or sag. They just weren't strong enough to do, and it might be our fault for buying big, heavy cameras. He's using an XSI though, which isn't a really heavy camera. So I don't know. Maybe he could look to some sort of tilt, but I think, as far as I know, the only way to adjust the actual tilt, I don't think there is a way to adjust the tilt on the William Optics. I think you just tighten the focuser down using these little Phillips head screws. You can tighten up the, you can like kind of lock out the focuser. But that doesn't work well because when you lock it, it changes the focus position a little bit. That's on my William Optics. I mean,
Adam, I can pitch in with one other thing too, is that if he does not have that threaded into the focuser, then he might want to consider getting a self-centering nose piece if he's not using one of those. There's a possibility that the nose piece is actually not setting square inside of the focuser.
Yeah. By the way, Keith has checked in on the comments and apparently can't get his mic working or something. But the new style focuser in this model, so that's probably not the focuser. Oh, ambient temperature was 102 degrees, and he was using thread ends. So let's just say that the field is not flat for some reason, and get on with the next part of the show, eh?
Let's do that.
Okay.
And you know, a field flattener can fix it, but I think if you don't have a field flattener, use what you have because this is still going to turn out to be a pretty nice image. So I'm just gonna, and so I know Keith is here. I know Keith is watching. That's actually too much of a stretch that I'm putting on there. And I had asked Keith a question earlier, and I didn't get a response yet about whether he uses Photoshop or pixinsight. With the DSLR, I'm more familiar with Photoshop, so I actually kind of quickly assumed Photoshop, but
he's using Photoshop CC.
Great. Okay, so I'm kind of doing the right thing here. Now that was a heavy stretch, but we're going to see what happens when I bring this back over. Keith, I'm working in the curves panel. This is pretty basic stuff. If you don't understand this, you can just do a shout out. I think I went a little bit too far with that last stretch. You're going to see what I can always step back with curves right there. If I'm finding I'm going too far, I can always use levels and bring the levels up. and then just bring the black point back down. It's kind of just like a balancing act. I'm pretty sure I'm not clipping on that. One of the things I like about curves is that it shows you when you're clipping stuff. And it doesn't appear I was clipping anything but those dust donuts over there in the corner there. This is where I'm going to pick on Keith a little bit more. Flats will do wonders for your image. I don't know if I forget to take flats or miss flats or my flats don't work or anything like that, I usually kick the ground and start cursing because I give up on the image usually. But as I continue stretching this, I'm going to continue working in curves and do more pointed curves. As I was working on this earlier, I ended up putting a mask on it, and trying to wait a little bit before I do that.
Hey, quick question.
Go ahead.
Are you going to ignore those dust donuts and like till the end, or like throughout the entire process?
You know, I am planning on ignoring them.
Okay.
And
I've had poor results, like trying to fix them in processing. I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't found a trick where I can sort of maybe brighten them or something.
I mean, I can do okay on them with. Oops, I'm still in curves. I can do an okay job, and I would have to do this at the very, very end because otherwise every stretch after this that I do, I'm gonna have more difficulty hiding it. So if I do it at the very end, it's my best chance of really hiding it. But the healing brush, and I hate to say it, it's not the best tool, but it does work.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack there. I was just curious.
Oh, no problem. No, actually, it's a good question, and that's not the right way to do it at all. It's a good question because I would, if it was my image and I had those in it, I would crop it. The reason I was leaning towards cropping in the first place was mostly because I think the image kind of suits a crop, and I'll show you what I mean. Most of the targets are right here and over here, mostly towards the bottom left. So by cropping it, I think I'm framing it a little bit better, and that's why I didn't really mind doing that. But yeah, spot healing brush towards the end has been my best result for getting rid of stuff like that. And I'm going to jump right back in, and just because I mentioned it, I am going to crop it now. And I hate this stuff.
While you're doing that and working that out, I got to find out what's happening here as far as group chat. I can see everybody, or most people's faces, half the people's faces. Are you guys looking at group chat while you're, so you can see this, so I don't have to repeat everything that's over there? Adam, are you looking at group chat, or are you, because occasionally things are coming in. Should I interrupt and tell you when that?
Please interrupt me to tell me, because I have difficulty flipping back and forth.
Keith apparently doesn't have his microphone working, so he did give us some information. Then Josh asked if Keith is if the focuser in the scope has threads, or that the nose piece is just threaded into it. Keith, can you type in under your comments? It's one piece from none T-type. One piece from none T-type is what he's typed in. So he's still back on the well, there's the crop. So the poopy looking stars up in the corner are somewhat gone and stuff like that. So
yeah, it got rid of them on the right side. It did exaggerate them on the left side, and unfortunately, it goes right through the Trifid Nebula. Mm-hmm. I just had this problem on an image the other day. An Iris Nebula, for some reason, got cloudy, got clear, and when everything started back up, the iris was off in the corner. And this was with my William Optics. I had the field flattener on it, but it still is a little bit off in the corner, and it was just enough to drive me nuts. I tried to reframe it to do a new mosaic, and it was really windy that night, and I didn't have much success, so I haven't shown that off much. So I have his image cropped, and I made a background copy, and I'm actually going to make a layer mask, because now normally, let me say it this way, the better the quality of the data, the further you're going to be able to stretch. And by not taking darks, not applying flats, not taking biases, you're giving yourself somewhat of a ceiling as to what you can do with your data. And the next data that was provided by Robert, I believe it was, will give you a good example of that. But I put this layer mask on there. Of course, duplicate layer, go down to here, click layer mask, it adds it. I want to select the image and copy it, and then hit Alt and click, put it into the layer mask. So it gives me pretty much a luminance image. So what's happening right now is it's hiding some of the, it's hiding most of the background, and it's just exposing a little bit of the foreground color. So when I do a stretch on this, I'm going to have the benefit of not really stretching out the background. And I just want to deselect it so it doesn't get annoying. And I'm going to put a level stretch on it just so I can see what's going to happen and see if the mask is doing its job. And as I do that, it's not really doing as much as I would have hoped. So maybe I have to go back and stretch that actual mask. So I'm going to click into the mask, and with this, what I want is I want there to be, I want more lightness in the mask. I don't want to really clip the whites that much. Probably better to take some of them from the midpoint slider. I still want to keep my background dark. Alright, I always start on the white side, or on the black side. Let me do it that way. Okay, I'm going to give that a try. I'm going to go back to the image in a quick level stretch. And I think that actually did what I was hoping to do, and it actually did it well because it's kind of keeping it under control. The reason I'm doing this so early is because I really want to keep the noise from coming out as I process this. Again, this is an unmodified camera. I didn't realize this was an unmodified camera when I was first processing it. Oh yeah, and I still have the mask on.
Hey, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Sean. Okay, so you created the mask by copying the entire image and creating a layer mask, right? You just paint. So when you're putting that mask in there, you're stopping it from affecting the darker part of the image, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I haven't used that before. I've done the inverted where you didn't affect the brighter parts to try to bring out faint stuff. But I had not done that the reverse of it.
Yes. If you find noise coming out of your background quickly, and it's, again, I've gone through this image, and what I was really struggling with at the end was doing a lot of noise reduction. And right now I'm just trying to keep that under control as well as I possibly can. So it's just a little bit of a way to cheat. And I kind of like it because the brighter it is, the more it stretches. I don't...
So your mask is stopping the background from being brightened, is that right? So you're brightening only the brighter parts of the image, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, and I might be killing some star color. In fact, I'm probably killing some star color, but it's at the expense of trying to pull out all of the darker stuff. And what I could do is, well, let me see here. Yeah, I can go back to this because I'm going to want to bring the background back down. It's not going to tell me when I'm clipping because I have the mask on. Actually, I'm not going to do that. what I'm going to do right now, because I think I got enough of that stretch out of it, is I'm just going to go right in and flatten it. And now what I'm going to try and do is selectively boost just the nebula by clicking a dark spot and then clicking a midpoint within the nebula, finding out where that is. So I have some space there. I'm going to see what happens as I just brighten that. I'm just going to tap up on my keyboard, and it's going to start to out. Not quite as well as I was hoping for. But what I'm going to do is, because I'm pretty sure a lot of this is just gradient. I don't know if it's from light pollution or what. I did crop it, so it could be just the vignetting of the scope itself, because it is dark over here. Although, well, possibly. It looks a little bit rounded. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick, quick gradient exterminator on this. Gradient exterminator is a great tool. More important when you are trying to fix vignetting or stuff like that. But
and what's the shortcut key you're holding to select more than one area?
Shift.
Shift. Okay.
So I select the inverse, and I'm going to jump right in to why is my gradient exterminator gone? Well, that's odd.
Do you happen to have the wrong version of Photoshop open, like a 64 or 32?
I don't think so.
Because I know I used to do that when I was using Photoshop. I'd open 32 when I had the 64-bit gradient exterminator.
Yeah, I know.
Check the mode to make sure it's 16-bit or RGB, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, this is going to... Okay, let's see here. Couldn't be anything. You know, I'm going to say you're right, because I opened it with a FITS file, and that's probably linked over to the wrong version of it. I apologize. Let me think.
Save it like that as a TIFF or whatever, and then import it into the.
I'm going to see if it lets me open another version of Photoshop at the same time. I have to close a million windows. No, it won't let me open. Okay. You know, I'm gonna I hate to say it, I'm gonna have to skip the gradient exterminator on that, because I already lost the file. Let's see, I saved it, but oh no, come on.
I'd like to interject and say that if any of you are poor like me and Gradient Exterminator seems a little pricey, that FitsWork is a freeware program that does an excellent job at flattening a background and neutralizing gradients. So
FitsWork. That's good. Always point out free programs, because if somebody's doing it for free, then maybe we don't have to pay so much for it.
I'll point out one more too, Adam. Annie's Actions is not free, but it's $25, and it has a whole host of actions, including a pretty powerful gradient exterminating well, I shouldn't call it that, a gradient correcting action that is multi-step and allows you to kind of select your background and trim it out of there. It's just another good one.
Thank you. I'm sorry, ignore that. Yeah, I'm just trying to think whether I could get into the other Photoshop, but I have some stuff kind of saved here that I want to get to. The interesting thing that was happening, and I think the mask might not have done exactly what I was hoping for. Let me go back. Oh, history, and now I closed the file, so I can't go back in time. The mask might not have done completely what I was hoping for, because when I actually had done this previously, a lot of noise came out of this side of the image, and not so much out of this side of the image. Now, that is probably because I was able to stretch the entire image a lot further than I am here. So what's probably going to happen is when I go in and try and just reset the background on something that I know is going to be a dark background, and I'm not necessarily going to keep this. You're going to see what happens, but because of that gradient, it's going to turn dark over here. I actually had the opposite problem after I had used Gradient Exterminator, which goes to show you it kind of fixes it well, but I don't want to say I'm going to be stuck on this image because I just wanted to show Keith some tips on this. But Keith, if I were to go further on this, gradient, as soon as I ran this Gradient Exterminator, you pretty much see the background turn pretty close to black. Some of the areas that had a little bit lower signal to noise, the background had a lot more noise, and that's kind of what I was saying. Over here, this side of the image was the noisiest part, where the light fall off is. The inside of this is actually pretty clean. So I think you did a really good job acquiring the data while you were standing at your telescope. I think there are a few things you could do immediately following or immediately before, and then in your house later on in the day that would make it a lot easier to do this, and it's probably worth trying that stuff. Image calibration really is that important. You do it, and it makes everything easier. And Keith, I don't want to cut your presentation short. Your data stuff short because I'm pretty close to the end, because once I did put that Gradient Exterminator, it cleaned it up pretty well, and just looking at this, I think that after that Gradient Exterminator, you'd have a pretty good image, and then as I were to darken the background and lighten the foreground a little bit more, this would really pop. I have, looking at it, preserved star color pretty well, and I think when you boost the saturation on this, obviously, I would not want to do that with a lot of without doing the Gradient Exterminator, because it's going to saturate the noise as well. But when you boost the saturation, assuming this background here had disappeared, you're gonna get some nice pop out of the nebula. And even the triplet over here is looking pretty nice. What drives me nuts is the elongation of the stars over here. And that's something mechanical that you'll probably want to chase down. Again, this is more of an open session, so I'm going to probably move on to a different image, and I didn't know if anyone wanted to jump in with any questions or comments. I'm going to jump over just to look at chat and see if anything's been going on. I really wish I could open a second.
There's been a side conversation about the mechanics of that focuser and some other things, and Keith's been taking some notes about the improvements and stuff like that. And he doesn't have a mic, so he wants, I'm sure he wants this repeated. Thanks for all the help and tips.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, so hang in there, guys.
Yeah, that's the mechanics of that you really have to look into. You have to be obsessive compulsive. Everything has to work, and then you start taking your images. And if one thing's off, it's going to drive you nuts for a long time. Okay.
And one last thing for that, there's a filter lens correction in Photoshop that you can use to tweak the stars on one side of the image. You can actually tilt the image, and I know it's not the best. You should really have round stars to begin with, but I've done lots of my images using that filter tool to make the lens tool to make them round. So.
Well, the best deconvolution tool is to not convolute things.
Right, sure.
Yeah, I think Tonk in the DSLR forum has a good method for using division and then moving, duplicate the layer, use division, and then you shift the image a little bit, and it'll take care of a little bit of elongation. Being that it's uneven in the field, I was actually wondering whether you could do kind of a gradient luminance mask, a mask where there's a gradient going through it, and then adding that division layer. It might actually be able to selectively take care of something that is in the one side. But that's kind of where you can take masks to crazy levels, because you can just target it at certain spots. That said, it might be really hard to come up with that right gradient at the right position. But you guys are looking at my Photoshop.
You can use Puppet Warp too, or Puppet Wrap, Puppet Warp, but it's just crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
as one time I was with Tony Hallis, and the group was asking, how do you, if you've got a little rotation in the stars, a little bit of streaking in the stars, how do you correct for that? And Tony looked up and says, well, you reshoot.
Yeah.
That's all. You just reshoot. So get it. You know, you got to get the good data. Now, if you made a goof, there are some places you can go to fix it, but mostly just on the next time, make sure that you're getting that right. Is all.
Yeah, there's a point where you like hit a level in your imaging where something goes wrong and you throw it away. I already had it. I had really heavy wind during my second Iris Nebula reshoot, and made my stars really big. I wasn't happy with them. My stars are round. They're just much bigger than the other panel of the mosaic, and I spent all night doing it, but I dumped it because it didn't look any better.
But let's make sure Keith knows that that image that we were just looking at is not one of those. He can get a pretty image that'll impress a lot of people. You know, won't the pixel peepers won't be happy with it maybe, but everybody in the church group will. You know.
Yeah,
so
this actually
keeper.
This turned out really well when I processed it earlier. I really need Gradient Exterminator to get it looking well, and I hate to rely on that one tool. But,
did you save the processed earlier image?
I did it at work,
Oh.
and I didn't save it. It's probably sitting on my screen at work right now. So I should have. I just didn't think about it. I did with the next image, and who knows why. But let me move on to the next image, because I think, Robert, you're in on the conversation, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Was there anything in particular that you wanted to know about your image, or that you wanted to see about your image?
Not really. I just figured, give you data so you can show people stuff. That's all I was doing, really.
Okay. Do you process in Photoshop or pixinsight?
pixinsight.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I should have known just by looking at the names of the files. And let me ask you this: did you do anything to the data before?
I use the pixinsight's pre-processing batch tool, or batch script. So I did the flats, the darks, and the lights and the biases, stacked them, and then now you just got to combine the three different colors.
Okay, I have them open in Photoshop right now, and these are unstretched, and I was kind of surprised at that. So you didn't do any DBE on them at all, or anything like that?
Nothing yet, no.
This is really good data, and
I image in a red zone, just to let you know.
this was taken from a red zone.
a red zone. I use a IDAS LP filter.
Huh. I used to use that filter too. And what kind of camera?
It's a QSI 690 WSG8.
Okay, this is really nice data. I'm gonna first of all I have to switch over. I'm sorry. Oops, navigating.
Is that just a IDES filter? This is not narrowband? Is that right?
Right, these are Astrodon RGB filters.
So I've heard that helps with light pollution. Do you find that that's true? RGB versus one-shot color in a light pollution zone?
I used to use the DLSR T2i modified, and I got really good images. The only thing I didn't like about it was that up here in Western New York, it gets really hot and humid, and I just didn't like my sensor getting up to 120 degrees. I wanted something.
Sure.
I'll chip in on that.
More light pollution with the RGB single shot DSLR than the individual red, green, and blue filters, would you say?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Do you think that there is less light pollution with your red, green, and blue filters than using the one-shot colors? That was the...
Yeah, it doesn't matter which camera you use, you're going to have the same amount of light pollution. So I just use the IDAS LP filter, that's all.
Robert, let me interject on that real quick, though, before you go forward. At least the beta color filters, and I think the Astrodon also, do have a gap between the filters at one of the main light pollution notches. So I've done studies on my side house in a red zone, and going from my one-shot color DSLR to the mono with the filters, and I can take exposures that are up to like 6 minutes or 8 minutes long on my side, and before I could only do it at like 3 minutes. So.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
So they have a notch purposely between the two color channels that actually allows you to. I think it's the sodium lights is what I can't remember what they're called. But there's a notch between them that allows you to miss a lot of the light pollution.
Yep, and from what I understand, the Astrodons do a little bit better than the betas. I have the betas, and I always wonder how much better would it be. But probably more so important with the narrow bands, and that's kind of what I don't know, counting my change for. I want the Astrodon narrowband filters.
Yeah.
And I missed the price increase. I was all ready to buy them, and then I missed that price increase, and now I'm bitter over the whole thing. So, okay, I'm trying to click on my Google Hangout screen. So I'm jumping back in, and I jumped into pixinsight. I have the 3 channels opened up here, and I think, Robert, you probably, being that you already processed in pixinsight, processing is going to be pretty close, pretty similar for everybody. First, LRGB combination. I had it opened up over here, but you could open it in the Process Explorer. I'm going to combine them, and that doesn't take long. And I'm going to put the screen transfer function on them, and you can immediately see this is pretty good data. There's not much of a gradient there. This is better than what I'm used to seeing when I process my stuff. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs barking. I don't know what they're barking at. There's a thunderstorm outside. Because I think Robert has done this before, and I think we're kind of we've gone over a lot of different stuff on the Astro Imaging channel. There's a few things that I kind of wanted to go over right now, especially in pixinsight. And just looking at this image right here, there is a process that a lot of people use frequently. I don't tend to use it as much, but in this data, I could see the benefit of using it. There is a little bit of a green noise cast to this that had come out a little bit further. You see it more on the bottom and a little bit more over here. But SCNR on a linear image gets that out pretty well, and I'm going to give it a try and see what happens. And of course, I have to go back, and I don't know. It might not have. I might not be crazy about what it did to the color, but I think as we progress on, it's gonna help it. There's one other tool that I don't think we've used yet in pixinsight, and I want to use this just to show you exactly what it is. Now that SCNR tool, if you have that green noise, and I posted an image on Astrobin a few weeks ago, and someone pointed out that it had a little bit of a green tint to it. So I went through and reprocessed it, and I didn't even notice the green tint until after they pointed it out. And then after they pointed it out, I kind of went through and I saw it then. So it's subtle, but it's there, and I think that it does depend on the way the screen transfer function works, whether you see it. But a lot of the times, yes.
Adam, could you do undo and redo?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to undo it, and then I'm going to redo it. Let me try and do a quick auto stretch on it. So there you go, and there you go. We're going to go back right now, and I hope you see that. Hopefully I'm making it smooth for you, and forward.
Yeah, because the blues are more when you take the when you use SNR, it's not as much of an aqua blue.
Yeah, and it's taking a lot of it from what would reveal as noise, what would reveal as chromatic noise as we go further on. And we still are going to color correct. We're going to go through color calibration, which should make it the right color. One thing, though, after SCNR that we haven't done yet on the Astromeeting channel is the channel extraction. What we do with channel extraction, normally when you open channel extraction, you're in the RGB tool, and you can extract either RGB. So if you had a DSLR image and for some reason you wanted to extract one channel from it, you could do that. But we're going to move over to the CIE LAV mode, and what we're going to do is we're just going to extract the L channel, the luminance channel. Again, I don't know. Out of force of habit, I always turn the screen transfer function off before I do anything like this. I don't know why. I just do. I extracted the L channel, and when I do that, I'm going to get a monochromatic or a grayscale image or whatever you want to call it, just the luminance of this image. You typically want to, now I have the RGB over here, the luminance over there. I'm going to close these out, tile the windows, and hide a few tools for you guys so you can see them. So it's the same thing. You typically want to do your sharpening or even your possibly your deconvolution, possibly even some noise reduction on the luminance, but most importantly, sharpening goes on the luminance, and noise reduction on the and chrominance noise reduction on the color data. So what you end up doing, you can actually end up blurring the color data a little bit. This isn't something that I've done a lot, and I just want to, so I don't want to go too far into it because I'm not sure how the results are going to turn out, but we were just talking about the RGB filters for CCD cameras, Astrodons, having that gap at the light pollution area. Now, a lot of people will image with CCDs and filter wheels, and they'll take a luminance image and then an R, a G, and a B image. And they'll use that luminance image for their overall luminance of the image. The RGB, sometimes they'll bin. They say they save time by binning. The RGB doesn't have to be as sharp. Visually, you don't perceive color as much as sharpness, so for that reason, RGB doesn't have to be as sharp. No damage as to having it be as sharp as long as you're not losing time. You are losing a little bit of time, but for all argument's sake, let's just say it that way. But sometimes if you have light pollution, what you can do is by extracting this luminance channel and actually not shooting a luminance image, you're taking advantage of the gap in your light pollution filters. And you're taking advantage of that in a way where you're saving time because you're not shooting a luminance, you're getting the benefit of still getting a luminance out of it, and it's a little bit cleaner. Because of my light pollution here, whenever I try using luminance, it messes it up. It has such a heavy gradient that the CCD is just so sensitive to it that it can't take care of it, and it doesn't filter anything out. It doesn't filter out any light pollution. So I just have given up on luminance in the red zone. So what you'd probably do is you'd go in and use deconvolution on this, or some sort of sharpening. I'm just looking at our time, and I'm not going to have time to do a ton of stuff. I'm trying to think what would be the biggest benefit. Deconvolution would probably take slightly too long. Deconvolution, let's see. For deconvolution, you have to create a mask of the image. I was actually talking to Sean earlier about masks, so let's start this off. To make a mask in pixinsight, you duplicate the image just by dragging it over, dragging it into the field somewhere. It duplicates the image for you quickly. You have your screen transfer function on that. I know that matches that image there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up histogram transformation function. Histogram transformation. I don't have a lot of time to do this really well, so I'm going to kind of rush through it, but I'm going to get all the points down. There's 3 parts to preparing for deconvolution, and that's first creating your luminance mask. That's what I'm doing right now. I drag the screen transfer function that was applied to that down to the histogram transform, and it's going to, this matches that screen transfer function. So I'm going to drag it. I'm going to reset screen transfer function, apply that to the image, and there I have a luminance mask for that. Normally, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm doing noise reduction, I would clip the blacks on that mask. For deconvolution, I don't have tons of experience with it, but I've actually gone through just using the screen transfer function mask and had good results. Second part of this is the time-consuming part. I'm going to show you the start of it. If you guys want to, after I get to this, what I'm looking for is dynamic point spread function. I'm going to show you the start of this, and if you guys want to have a chat about anything or bring anything up while I'm doing this, you're welcome to. Point spread function, the way you start off is by selecting, you actually have to select the stars in the image. A little bit tougher when they're tight together like this, but I'm going to select them one at a time. You don't want Gaussian stars. You want, I believe, Moffat distribution of your stars. There, I got Moffat. In my experience, it had a lot to do with the size of the star. And the point of deconvolution in general, you're really going to sharpen up a lot of this nebula. I could shrink the stars a little bit in the meantime. In this, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Not because the stars are overblown, just because it's really good to show off the nebula in this. So I'm going to go through and start picking star at a time, making sure I get Moffat distribution on them. You guys can start if you want to have a conversation while I'm doing this, because I like to pick 50 stars.
That's what I was going to ask you, is how many stars do you normally pick, Russell?
I like to pick 50. Sometimes I shortchange myself, and I'm okay with picking 30. But I think the more the better, and the more across the better it is across the image.
I have a side conversation topic.
Go ahead.
Okay, so while you're picking these stars, so basically you're creating a luminance for this image that you're going to apply sharpness and brightening to, I assume. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you have an RGB version of it, and that's your color, and that's going to be like you're going to reduce the noise in the RGB, right?
I am going to, yes, try and reduce the noise in the RGB. I can get away with blurring them. I'm sorry, I'm
Or
trying to
blurring it, right?
do more
Sure.
blurring. And
So I was curious, so in Photoshop you could do the same thing. So Scott Rosen has like this long tutorial on creating a synthetic luminance. So you shoot one-shot color with like a DSLR, and you take the RGB and then extract a luminance channel and I think that you do pretty much the same thing that you're doing with your luminance channel here. Although I'm not sure on the picking the stars exactly what you're doing. But yeah, you take the luminance channel and sharpen it and stretch it or whatever, right?
It's exactly the same principle.
Same principle.
Exactly the same principle. The only difference I'm going to say is what I want to get out of this is deconvolution, and that's what pixinsight has. Deconvolution is just a really strong tool. Before I owned pixinsight, I saw a tutorial on pixinsight deconvolution, and started searching the internet to see if I could get deconvolution on Photoshop, and I did find a few things that claimed to be deconvolution on Photoshop, and no matter what I tried, I just couldn't get good results out of them. I don't have enough stars here, but I'm gonna say I have enough stars here. It'll still give me good results. I think I'm pretty well across the image. The stars are pretty well. We'll see how pretty well round they are. I'm gonna click this camera icon right here. There are no, because there we go. Okay. Let me think here. It's a dynamic interface. There's no stars. What the heck is going on? Anyone out there have any idea why this is not working for me? Oh, I don't have 30 stars. What's going on? I picked 30 stars, but there should be some stars in there. What's going on?
I think some of the stars that you had selected are not of the correct. Because you have some Lorentzian. I think you also had another Gaussian, so just remove those and make sure that they're Moffat only.
All Moffat right now. Huh.
So are the star? I can't see it in the image, but are the stars actually selected? Okay, now I see the boxes now. Yeah.
Yeah, the stars are selected.
What was the error message that's coming up? There are no selected stars or something along those lines?
Selected stars to generate a synthetic PSF. And I'm trying to think. Did I have this happen previously? Okay. There's no mask on it.
Is it because of the screen transfer function? Just out of curiosity.
No, it wouldn't be because
Is that, wait a minute, is that a linear or non-linear image that you're working with?
This is linear.
It's got to be non-linear. So when you're, so this is an issue that I've run into as well. So this is in one of the tutorials. He doesn't mention, if I remember correctly, he doesn't mention whether or not he's working linearly or non-linearly. But what I have found is that when I'm generating the masks as well as or selecting the stars for the DPSF, I had to stretch the image initially, then extract the luminance, then use that as my mask, and then select the stars and generate the mask from the non-linear image, and then my deconvolution worked correctly. Because whenever I tried it in a linear state, it failed. Now, I don't remember this particular error message, though. This is a new error message to me. I haven't seen it before, but for me, the results were not as good as they were if I was working in a non-linear state. Now, that is only for the masks, for the star mask, as well as the luminance mask that's going to be applied to the originating image that you're going to be performing the deconvolution on. The image itself should remain in a linear state. And that's based on my experience. So anyone out there is listening, please feel free to correct that in the YouTube video, but to do with my images.
So I have a question. Do you think that that's because the deconvolution algorithm is not seeing those dimmer stars because they haven't been stretched?
That's exactly it. Yep.
Okay.
Because that's happened to me when I apply my mask as well. Because even if you try to generate, like if you were to try to generate a star mask on a linear image, you'll see what'll happen. There's nothing going to come up because there is no data.
That would explain it, because I have had some issues generating star masks for my deconvolution. The funny thing is I haven't had bad luck with deconvolution when it works. And I could swear, but I'm not going to, but I could swear I've done it on linear images, which it's
I tend to. Yeah, I've always done that. As I said earlier, I've always done it that if I'm working with the luminance, the extracted luminance, or the actual luminance image itself, it's always in a nonlinear state when I'm selecting the stars or generating my star masks, because you're not going to get the exact results, because you'll see how it's going to affect the stars if you work in a linear versus nonlinear state, or you get this new error message that I've never seen before. And I shouldn't speak with assertion like that, but that is a hypothesis based on what we're seeing here.
You know, I don't know, how does the machine know whether it's linear or nonlinear? I think it knows whether the star stands out enough from the background, which tends to happen more if it's nonlinear. But I don't. Maybe the issue is not whether it's linear or nonlinear; it's just whether or not there's enough of a difference.
Well, with post-stretch, it's letting me. It seems to be working.
Yeah, because the data itself, because now you're decreasing the black point and bringing up the white point, so the actual data is now being brought to the forefront, whereas before it's just embedded and it hasn't been stretched out yet. So there's just not enough information for it to pull it out.
Well, or there's not enough delta in the information. There's not enough change in the information. You see the difference between those two? I mean, if he happened to have a luminance that the stars he was picking stood out from the background more, even though it had never actually been stretched, it would work. But but he has to stretch it in order to bring out those differences.
Yes, but then the sampling that you're working with is going to be significantly smaller. Then you're not going to get an accurate PSF at that point. That's why it's just.
But that would explain why it would work with a non-stretched image sometimes, linear image sometimes, but it really is happier with a stretched image because it can work more efficiently with it.
Right. Would you agree with that, Adam? That the times that it works, you're pretty much picking the brighter stars. That would make sense then, right?
You know, what I'm noticing right now is it's giving me the Moffett distribution on the really small stars, and I don't quite know why, and I don't think it's going to give me a good PSF on that small star because it's not of enough pixels. I think the PSF seems to be 5 pixels across. Can you see that? Or 3 pixels across? And normally when I do this, it gives me a good, nice star representative of what's in the image, but not necessarily the dimmer stars, and this is forcing me to pick the dimmest of the stars. So it might be my I mean, it's possible I was using deconvolution wrong, but for some reason it was working for me. But I'm not sure about this. Hytham, is that Hytham that's in there?
Yeah, it is. It's me.
Yeah. When you do a dynamic PSF, the Moffett stars, they're usually not I know they're smaller than the bright ones, but
it's not the dimmest ones. No, absolutely not. It tends to be the as bad as it sounds, the medium-sized stars.
Yeah.
So medium brightness. Those are the ones that give me the Moffett. But anything smaller or larger, it's either Lorentzian or Gaussian.
Oh, I got.
That's a nice Moffett star.
Got Moffett out of that. All right, I don't know what's going on. So maybe it was my.
So one of the things that we should have touched on before we moved on, now in my tutorial when we had talked about doing the extraction of the dust, and I touched a little bit on RGB working spaces. So guys, it's critical that whenever you're working in a standard RGB image, you define your working space prior to extracting the luminance. Now this might be one of the good images, or a very good image, because it looks like there's some good color data that was caught in that. And I'm going to take a step back before I put my foot in my mouth and dig myself into a hole. But this is a one-shot color camera, correct?
No, it's a QSI mono.
Oh, it's a QSI mono, but you did not take a luminance. It's just RGB?
Right, I haven't had a chance to do luminance yet.
Okay, so this still applies here in this case. So even though I said that one-shot color camera, because I made the silly assumption that's what we're working with, you can define your RGB working space. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it because I touched a little bit upon it in my tutorial, as I said previously, but what you want to do is make sure you define an RGB working space image that weights heavily the red and the blue and not the green so much, because what it's going to do to your extracted luminance is going to make it not as punchy, so you're not going to see as much detail. I've tried this out myself, and please feel free to do it. So if you open up your RGB working space images, if you guys are ever working with it, and you take a look at it, and you make sure you select the check mark so it follows the image that you're looking at, what it'll do is it'll give you a predefined coefficients. So you have like your chromaticity coefficient, your luminance, as well as there's one other one, gamma. That was the other one. And you'll see that it's based on a standard sRGB config. So what it's going to do is you're going to see that green is weighted so heavily, and what you want, and there's a reason behind that because of human evolution, and our eyes tend to like green so we can find food and blah blah blah. But what you want to do is you just take the slider, jack it all the way up to 1 for red, all the way up for 1 for blue, and then decrease the green. Now, I can't remember the exact methodology that is used to determine how much green you want to apply to the luminance coefficient for green. I tend to use between 0.10 to 0.15.2 at most. If you guys get the opportunity, try it yourselves. Try it with the 2 different spaces. You'll see that there's a huge difference. But the key is if you've got very, very good unbinned data that you're working with. Just a simple point, and well, kind of simple, sorry. And I did pontificate quite a bit, and I apologize for that. There was something else that I did want to touch on. RGB working space, dynamic PSF. It'll come to me in a minute.
So I have, thank you, Haitham. Actually, I'm sorry, oh no, I hear I echoed myself. Okay. I didn't, RGB working space, I actually watched your video a few times as I was working on my Iris Nebula, and I was touching on that, and I know exactly what it does, but I don't know it well enough to explain it to people. So it's one of the reasons I haven't even gotten into it, but that's probably, I'm in here to learn as well, so I don't feel bad when people stop me and say, you know, it'd be better if you did it this way. But I have gone through and generated that, and I would probably go for more. I don't know if it's because I'm unfamiliar with the image scale or something, but I had a little bit more of a difficult time getting my PSF. But what that does is it shows you a kind of a representative of what your stars look like across the field of the image. If they're elongated in one way, it takes the average of it all, and pretty much just it's kind of going to give your the future deconvolution something to work with. So once we get that, we can close it out. We're canceling the active dynamic session. I just tuck it away over there.
Can I ask you a question real quick? I'm sorry. I just need to ask. I have to know. So the whole point of this point spread function is that you are defining what's a star and what's not. Is that accurate?
No.
No.
You're telling the deconvolution algorithm where the how it's kind of the distribution of the misalignment of the stars throughout the image. If the stars are misaligned in one direction, it gives the algorithm something to work with to help sharpen it up a little bit further. And
let me suggest that you're telling you're trying to define what your average star currently looks like, the shape of your average star currently. That's what you're trying to do with the PSF, right?
Well, yes, but overall, like, what's the overall intent? Mm-hmm. And that's like, what does the PS, and I think we're going to get into that in a little bit. What's the reason we're doing all this? And
right. So my question was, so like, if you were to do this in Photoshop, right? So, or some equivalent of it. You have to mask out the stars, and you have to blur the mask of the stars out, right? And then you can decon, and it's basically like a sharpening routine, right? Is that accurate?
Yes.
The decon, but you don't want to sharpen the stars, and so my question was: is this process so that you can define how round and how far out you're going to blur the stars so that you don't sharpen your stars?
No. In fact, that's kind of what I'm doing right now with the star mask. This is the third part of it. The first part is you make the luminance mask. The second part of it is making the point spread function, which is the selecting all those stars. Third part is you make the star mask. And the star mask does... I really don't want to say it masks the stars, because in this case, with deconvolution, I believe that we're actually preventing de-ringing of the stars. And I can't even tell you what deconvolution does. I just want to kind of show you, and I'm hoping to get this star mask right.
Yeah, I can fill in some gaps for the question. So what was the? And then I apologize because I'm just kind of working on my Cygnus mosaic at the same time as I listen to you guys. So what was the question?
Yeah, so I think I kind of get it now. So there's a decon process using smart sharpening in Photoshop where you would mask out the stars so that the decon process does not sharpen your stars.
Yes, that is correct.
I was curious if this point spread function is an integral part of that. Like, it determines how much of the star is going to get sharpened, or if any at all. And
no,
it
does not.
It does not.
No, so the point spread function is used for, there's a very, very specific function of the point spread function, and that is just to determine your, I guess, how could I put this without getting overly technical? But it determines the focus of your entire optical system. I guess that's the best way to look at it. So it takes a measurement of your FWHM values as well. So I guess I remember reading on Wikipedia a little while ago about what it does exactly and what it is used for. It takes a look at essentially the blob of your star just to determine its size and what it looks like across your image. Now, you don't want to sharpen your star because you end up getting what Adam had said previously about was de-ringing, or ringing artifacts around it. So you want to prevent that by using star mask, and that performs a de-ringing-like aspect against it, or at least protects the stars from having the deconvolution applied to it. And then you can use a de-ringing parameter within within deconvolution routine that prevents that ringing from happening any further. So deconvolution has a number of different parts. One, you want to get a point spread function because it determines the size of your star, what your star looks like at focus, and takes a general measurement of that. Then you create a star mask to be applied to the stars itself to protect the stars from getting the convolution applied to it. And then you have a luminance mask which protects the rest of your image, so such as the lower laying signal areas, from being sharpened, because the last thing you want to do is sharpen the noise in your image, right? You want to focus it on the brighter parts of the image itself. So it performs those three different things. Now it'll tighten up, and you always want to protect the brightest stars in the image too. So it will tighten up some of the stars, so it increases your FWHM value, so it looks like you have much tighter focus. But it can only do so much, so I wouldn't rely on that, of course. Good focus, great seeing, and transparency is king. Yeah, does that answer your question, or did I just kind of trail? And I apologize.
No, yeah, no, that makes total sense, right? So, like in Photoshop, if I were to do this, and I can see now that pixinsight has, so the three-part process allows you to do your deconvolution and bring sharper focus to not the really dim parts that are going to bring out noise, and not the really bright parts that are going to blow out your stars, right? So I think in Photoshop it's more of a general procedure, and then in pixinsight it's more of a refined procedure. So it makes total sense to me now.
Cool. And one of the things that you should also take into consideration is that I wouldn't use deconvolution. Like, I started to use it on some of my images when I was using my reducer, my Takahashi with my gigantic CCD. It's a bad idea if your images are heavily undersampled. The best time to use it is if you're either, you're right on Nyquist theorem, if you're a hardcore follower of that, and you're sampling, your system samples correctly. Or if you're slightly oversampled, that's when it tends to help. If you're heavily undersampled like me, when I'm imaging at either 3.5 or 5 arc seconds per pixel, it's just not really worth doing. Some might argue otherwise, but it's almost pointless because there's so little small scale structures to work with at that point.
So do you just use normal sharpening then?
I don't use any sharpening in my images at all.
None, really?
0. Yep, because I have found that there are a couple things. One, I'm still not that good, so I don't know if my masks aren't all that great. I think my masks are kind of poor, to be honest, and I have found that you can go overboard very quickly when you start sharpening.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm totally
and I see that plagued all over the place. Like I see people that just think, "Yep, crank it up." No, don't crank it up. But that's just me, right? It's subjectivity.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But one thing I'll say is with the Edge, when I'm shooting at 2032 focal length, the sharpening really helps. I don't think I could get clearer skies, and sometimes I really need it. My Crescent Nebula most recently, no way around it. In fact, I didn't do it my first run, and I just thought, oh, yeah, I have a nice Crescent Nebula, and then I ran decon on both channels, the O3 and the H alpha, and bam, I mean, it popped. So it can help. I think your focal length, you don't really need to sharpen too much, but when you're fighting or seeing, I think that's when you really need it. Wow, Windows has detected that my computer's performance is slow. I've never seen that before. So meanwhile, in the meantime, I actually took a quick little sampling, and this isn't going to be the best example, but you'll see a little bit of it. First, it's blowing up the stars. I don't know why it's blowing up the stars, but it is. But if you would pay attention to the nebula as I toggle through it, and actually,
what was your star mask like? I'm sorry,
my star mask wasn't great.
Okay.
I can
Do you still have it open? Yeah, just want to see what the numbers are.
Yeah,
that's why. So you've got the scale set to 5. So was it the larger stars that were popping?
I think it was all of them. Yeah, rings in them too. Seemed to be all of them, and I'm sure it was my star mask because I've been rushing through this. I've been getting paranoid when I see it. When I see us go over an hour, where the heck is my star mask?
So the mask is really important. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Every mask you do, you can improve your image by doing a better mask.
Yeah, your masks will make or break your images.
I think I've been being lazy with my mask, like in Photoshop. Like, I've been going nowhere near the detail that you guys are getting into here.
There's the star mask. So it
right.
Looked like it might have I don't know.
So in the star mask, you want the mask, the stars to look smaller than your actual stars?
Probably you want them to be pretty close to the stars, slightly bigger, I would say, but
slightly bigger, okay.
Yeah, but just kind of blurred over them. In fact, Hytham did a great star mask in his processing the other day, which was kind of a 2-step star mask. Hytham, what do you think of this star mask? Stars?
It's kind of hard for me to see because the stream isn't the greatest for me, but
hold on, what's going on here?
They bring up a good point, Adam. I think that we could probably do almost an entire session on creating different kinds of masks in Photoshop. I guess over the last year, probably developed 10 different ways to make star masks in Photoshop, and I if I spend I probably spend more time on learning how to make masks than anything in Photoshop. So I would say that's number one key in being able to stretch your data well.
Yeah, well, this is the. I don't want to take us way longer, so I'm going to finish up my thought on this deconvolution. I just want to show you. Ignore the stars blowing out, but look what happens to the nebula. And this is just a small. When you're running deconvolution, it's a really processor-intensive action, so you should always do it on a small preview. Otherwise, you have to do it, walk away for 10 minutes, come back, depending on your processing speed of your computer. But so just look at the nebula. This is undone, and then I redid it. It's overdone. It's burning out some areas in the nebula, but it's also revealing a lot of structure. So what I would do in the end is I would go in, and when I'm finally happy with the way that the deconvolution is working on that, I would go in and I would apply that to this image. I also might have done noise reduction on this, and at that point I would probably have a prepared RGB and stretched image, and I would use channel combination to add just this luminance back to the RGB image. I hate doing this because I really feel like I'm doing this every week, where I just kind of stop in the middle of what I'm doing. But I do want to open up the conversation, and maybe if I could open up the conversation on a particular topic, and I was thinking when they said masks, it might be it. Insofar as running out of time when you're processing stuff or anything like that, should we be concentrating on smaller things, or how's this format of the Q&A? Like I said, I hate to end it there, but I'm going to jump right back in. I think I'm going to show you guys my face again. But what do you guys think of the Q&A format? What do you guys? Do you guys feel like I'm running out of time or not showing the end of the images, or go right ahead?
I think what we should do is just focus on what the individuals want to see exactly. So the guys that are giving their images, they shouldn't say, well, can you just process my image from front to back? I think that is an inefficient use of time. What I would do is, well, what problems are you having specifically? Like an example that I have, for me, I suck at color calibration and I suck at looking at colors. So I would ask people, can you guys calibrate this and please help me balance this color image out? What do you guys think? Yes, no, maybe, why? And then just go through, at least key in on what the user's having the biggest problem with.
I agree that we have to narrow it because you can't present an hour every time like that. I think, though, that we may have a problem. Some people may not know that they suck at this or that. They may not realize that their real problem is not how they stretch, but that they never went and got clean data in the first place, and you'll never get it stretched properly. Stuff like that. So every time I've ever had to work with the presenter, they always have to ask me, like, what's my audience going to be like? And I always have to tell them, I have no idea what your audience is going to be like until I put on a lot of astroimaging workshops. And I don't know what people are going to be like. So I agree with that we have to narrow it down to more specific questions. To ask you to process all the guy's image or something is not going to work. And besides that, it's going to get boring for those of us that already know how to stretch, stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe ask for topics a week before or something like that, like Haitham was saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I've been trying to ask for more specific topics, and I'm trying to think in the past topics that have come up. There are actually some good topics. DBE on, there are a few topics, DBE on star-heavy fields, or DBE where there's lots of nebulosity and you're just trying to do it in pointed spots. Haitham's topic, I feel like they're topics we could cover in 15-minute intervals. The problem with processing stuff like this is it just takes too long, and I'm trying to talk, and I'm not doing as good of a job as I would if I wasn't talking. And so I don't disagree with that at all. I do see us going way, not that we're going way over time, but that we get kind of cut off halfway in, and so that those small digestible topics are probably a good idea. Anyone that wants to suggest a topic, feel free to now. Feel free to post it on the Google Plus page or anything. Who was that speaking?
The one thing
Sorry,
I was
that
going
was
to...
me.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, Robert. Have at it.
I was just going to say is that, just stick with one image and just use that week to week to week to week, so that way you're not trying to process different images possibly, unless someone comes up with a specific saying, I'm having trouble with a certain aspect of my image. It just might make it easier for you then.
Mm-hmm. I did, part of my intention going into these two images, after I saw them, I was somewhat excited about it because there was a big difference between the two. Robert's image did, and it must have been that light pollution filter. It was pretty clean right across the board, and I'm not knocking Keith's image at all, but because if you had taken flats and darks and biases, I think I would have said, oh, this is a pretty clean image. He could use a field flattener, but it's a pretty clean image. And I kind of saw that contrast, and I tried to play it up in a way that it would kind of demonstrate, at least to people out there, get it right. And we've been pushing this whole issue, but get it right off the bat. Don't do it right because you did it twice. Get it right first time.
I think it was great that Keith did give his image, even in the state that it's in, as bad as it is. Sorry, Keith. But the good thing about that is at least people will see what is defined as a bad image, and then they have learned, okay, well, what can I do to improve it right off the bat? They heard immediately, well, there's flats missing. We saw that there were donuts. That we know that flats can correct that. We saw some elongated stars, so that could be a mechanical issue of any sort, be it the focuser or lack or improper tilt in the entire optical train. So even if users don't submit that, so anyone else that's listening out there, go ahead and submit your image as is. It'll make it easier for, we can use it as a tutorial of, well, here's what's wrong with the image and here's what was missing during the calibration or during the planning phase of it, I guess you could say. And then those who do submit the clean stuff, we can focus more on the actual post-processing aspect of it.
That's a good point. I will say Keith's image did turn out relatively well. In fact, David Rankin even posted a good version of it on Cloudy Nights at one point, and it did turn out pretty well. It was tough. It could have been better. It wasn't an awful image. Everyone's at different levels in this, and had I taken an image like that in my first year, I'd probably be jumping up and down, showing it to all my family. So it's hard to say what's a good image, what's a bad image, and I don't know. For some reason, I think I lost my my video, but
I think that's a really good point, Adam. Especially for people who are just starting. They might look at their data because generally your data is going to be really dark and you don't see much in there, and there might be issues with it, but you can show them the power of processing by going through and showing what you can get out of it. I would have never believed that when I first started looking at the data I had, and I go back and look at it now and I'm able to bring out much better pictures than I did at that point as well.
Yep. It's funny how many, I'm not going to say misconceptions, but you tell people who don't know what we're doing what exactly goes into it, and they have no idea. They think you're taking a camera and going click, and then printing it out, and they don't realize the hours and hours and hours that go into it. Even the people at work, when I show them photos, they think I'm putting a camera up to it and going click. And when I explained to them that I was up all night, they were like, "Well, why? You're just taking a photo." And it's funny how. And that's just acquisition. Then processing, that's a whole other battle.
You have a huge moth in your house. Sorry.
I know. It was so hot today. It was so
I just
hot
saw like this bat go flying by.
There was actually thunderstorms, and I was cheering because it cooled it down a little bit, but all the windows are open.
Oh, the other thing that I want to touch on is that, as the presenter is presenting, especially if we're doing something focused, so something that is not collaborative like this approach, but if we're doing something that is focused, we shouldn't, and this is just me because I went back to watch my own presentation and see where I could fix it and do it better for the next time. It's amazing how much light that the moth's wings are reflecting every time it whips by the camera. Sorry. I should get my girlfriend up here. She hates them. She screams every time she sees them. Anyway.
Before you go too much further down that path, I think you're talking about interruptions, and you keep interrupting yourself to talk about the moth.
I know. It's like total ADD. Ooh, look, shiny, right? No, so as it goes back to relating to interruptions, we should just let the presenter finish all the way through so it doesn't just affect the flow, and then we can just collect the questions at the end and just walk through them step by step. And the presenter could always circle back to say, okay, well, here's the step that I worked on, and they could just go through it and answer the question there at the end. Or I don't know what you guys think of that, just wanted to bring it up.
Well,
go ahead.
At that point, why don't we record the presentation and just play it? It's no longer, why do we have this chatty thing anyway?
No, I'm saying at the end because the questions can still be taken at the end.
Right,
of the
right. But at that point, you could just go ahead and start your PowerPoint and run it all the way through and do everything you're going to do, and there is none of this interactivity.
Well, depending on the kind of presentation, that would be best, because I found that whenever, and I noticed that when my audio was cutting out during the presentation, it's because I was performing something that was processor intensive. Even something as simple as, zooming in on the image and just moving it around to give you guys examples. I correlated that immediately and thought, oh shoot, that's what's affecting the audio stream at that point.
I'd like to chime in on that. That's what I intended to do last week, was almost actually make a screencast of the processing I wanted to go through, and you could actually pause it at that point and then answer questions, pause the screencast and answer questions if you wanted to. But the other thing that's nice about that is I don't think any of us are to the point in processing where when we process something, we go through the first time, it ends up beautiful, just like we want it. So, a lot of times, like last week when I was trying to process M42, I didn't get nearly the color or sharpness out of it that I did when I finally got it right. But to me, a screencast would have been better in a conversation, pausing the screencast and going in and out of it. But also, you might want to have the image open in Photoshop or pixinsight and be able to show them stuff as they're asking questions.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to do in mine. I'm not sure how successful I was, because that's why I had done a lot of the processes prior to starting, saying, okay, so this is the step, and then I would just move over to the next window and say, here's what it looks like finished, so you guys can see the before and after next to one another. Definitely room for improvement for all of us, I guess, because we're still brand new to this particular kind of format. Definitely, if there is a better way of doing it, like, I mean, if you guys want to keep the interactive Q&A, great. Let's just work together with the presenter and those that are doing the moderation for predetermined cutoff points.
I'm responsible for that interruption and during your show and all of them up until now. And you know what? Some of those questions, I mean, you weren't stopping. So it had to be an interruption if we were going to get it asked at all.
No, I completely understand. Yeah, no, I understand, because I'm a rambler, so I'm more than happy for someone to say, "Hey, yo, shut up, dude." And
well, that's what we were doing, kind of thing. And it's tough because we're not looking at each other's faces so much as we should be.
I think it's always going to be a tough balance, because if we're doing, on one hand, you're going to get asked really good questions. On the other hand, it's a bit distracting, and it makes it harder to go through the workflow as you'd like to. Mm-hmm. I think, Hytham, the way you did it, where you set everything up in advance and had so you would do your step, but you knew what the next result was. It's not like I had to go back and trial and error and go through it, but you did your next step, and you would say, instead of running this process, I'm going to jump over to the image that already had this process applied to it. That's kind of a good way to stay on track. I don't really mind interruptions. In this Q&A format, to be honest, I wouldn't mind if I was interrupted 100 times, and people said don't do it that whatever it may be, because I was doing a lot of trying with this stuff. You know, you do one step and you go 3 steps ahead, and you realize that you have to go back 4 steps and do that step over and go 3 steps ahead, and then so it's really hard to do that type of trial and error, which is why having it all done in advance. I did not get Robert's data until about 8 o'clock tonight, and my son was sitting at the computer watching his nighttime videos, so I didn't have a chance to do that.
Yeah, I apologize about that.
No problem. At least we got some data, but that was one of the reasons I didn't get a chance to do it then. And I was hoping the Q&A would be a little bit more open and it would be more conducive to that, but it is what it is.
What if we have the presenters get a hour presentation together and plan on the sessions being 90 minutes from now on, so you're not running into a wall at the end of an hour?
Plan for an hour session, or plan for
a 90-minute session with an hour worth of. Sorry.
Please back that off to 45 minutes. People don't have an hour attention span. 45 minutes is pushing it. But you have a 45-minute prepared presentation where you're going to start here and go there, and then actually you could be sitting there playing it while you're watching the comments come in, and if you want to, you could stop the show and comment on the comments, you know, that kind of stuff. But I like the idea. Just make it 45 minutes instead of an hour. 45 minutes and then a half hour of questions or discussion like we're doing now.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I'm always shocked at how much longer it takes than it took in the trial run. I literally could do a lot of this stuff in like 10-15 minutes. The Photoshop took me 15 minutes to do. It took me 45 minutes to do on here, so that kind of slowed me down.
The other thing too that I would comment on is if we're trying to, fill out our slots for what we're going to present on, is if people are submitting their data, between yourself and Python and me and whoever else wants to, any of us could record a tutorial that's half an hour to 45 minutes long and play it any week and take questions and answers on that tutorial as we present it. So that might be a good option for filling out weeks when we're having trouble coming up with ideas for what we want to do.
Yeah, even just narrate the tutorial. That's a great idea. And that way, at least you're first of all, if you are interrupted, or if someone suggests doing it a different way, you can't do it a different way. You have to stick to the script. So it'd almost keep you on track.
Or, as you're playing it, you could be following along when you're in Photoshop. And so if somebody says try it a different way, you have it right there at that state.
You asked last week what was the value of snapshots. Snapshots could give you a lot of those steps right along the way, where you could just go right to that place in the process and say, oh, we can try this, or hey, I can show you how to do it this way.
Well, that's a good point.
The other thing I was going to say is, don't hop from pixinsight to Photoshop. Do 1 week of maybe photoshopping of it, because that can possibly confuse people, or just throw you off track a little bit too.
I would agree with that. If you're going to stick to an hour session, you need to stick to one piece of software.
Yeah, that's something I'm discovering. In fact, I probably I would have preferred even today. It's supposed to be a share your data Q&A session. I was kind of thinking in advance we'd get 4 or 5 pieces of data. What would have happened if we got 4 or 5 pieces of data? We would have.
Don't ask any questions. I'm going to do this really fast.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to make some choices. Baja Hout, a British journalist, said that in order to illustrate a point, you must exaggerate a lot and you must omit a lot. And you just have to do it.
Yep. All right.
So I'm sorry I had to step away for a moment, but I missed the last bit of the call here. But do we have a plan for next session?
We do not have a plan yet for next session, and
so can I make a suggestion? Like
go ahead.
Masks specifically, like either in Photoshop or pixinsight, and then what specifically you use them for, like either stretching the dim data or protecting your stars, and how you. Because I was curious, I didn't get to ask the question like, between Hytham or yourself, Adam, or somebody that uses Photoshop, like Josh, like if you were going to make a star mask and you were really going to do it so that it makes or breaks your image, like how long would you spend making that star mask?
Just depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish or what it is you're trying to do, and it depends on the profile of the image itself and the stars that you want to target. Because so as I create my mask, as I go through when I'm processing my images, it just depends on what I'm doing exactly, right? So if I'm focusing on large-scale structures or small-scale structures, my mask is going to have to reflect what I'm protecting or what I'm exposing. Sometimes I can nail it the first shot, and that happens once out of every 1,000 times I do it, and it's pure luck.
Right.
And then there are times, where I go through and just do an iterative steps in order to get it correct. Sometimes, even with the great thing about pixinsight, and I can't speak to Photoshop, so of course Josh or Adam can speak for me and can speak up for that. But in pixinsight, you have the capability to create masks by subtracting or combining multiple images together. Like I've done it in mine where I combine 2 images to get the best of both worlds. You can go even further by subtracting it. So you can create, by subtracting an inverse of your luminance mask, where you'll have a mask that protects the stars. So when you have a luminance image, it exposes all the brightest parts of your image, and you don't really want to expose the stars, but you just want to focus on the nebulosity. In pixinsight, you have the capability to create a mask that blocks the stars but exposes your nebula, or the inverse of that. So it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. There is no, unfortunately, one answer to, it takes me 5 minutes, but it takes 5, it can take 20. I've spent 45 minutes trying to get the right mask, trying to learn it.
Right, sure. So I guess my question was more like, so let's say you're doing something like Cygnus where you have nebulosity everywhere.
Yeah.
And you really want to bring that out, but it's a rich star field. It's something that you would spend more time focusing on not blowing out your stars, right? So is that like a 20 or 30-minute procedure, or is it really just 5 minutes, or... I think that was more of my question.
Yeah, it just depends on the image and how dense the star field is and what stars you're going after. So one of the images I'm working on right now is my Heart and Soul nebula, and it is the biggest pain in the ass that I've ever had to work on. I can't get the color right, and their star field is so bloody dense. It's hard to focus on the smallest stars because my image is so heavily undersampled because I've imaged it with my reducer. Everything looks like little squares. So trying to target just the tiniest, smallest scale structures, it doesn't produce the most effective mask. So you have to just settle and try to find, the comfortable medium. To answer, it's either 5 minutes or 30 or 40 minutes. It's a lot of experimentation. That's how it has been for me specifically.
Yeah, I also have a folder on my desktop that just has Photoshop images of many different masks that I've literally saved. You can do the same thing that Hytham was talking about in Photoshop, but you'll be taking pictures of your masks and combining them with other pictures of masks to do that. You can definitely subtract and combine masks the same way, but it's I think more manually intensive in Photoshop. The richer the star field and the more nebula and stuff there is, the longer it generally takes for me.
It's the hardest part, in my opinion.
So maybe we should save that for another session. I'm not sure what your guys' thoughts are on that, but
masking?
I think masks are like a really big part of it. Like we could do more than one session on masks, you
definitely could.
Yeah,
it's a black art.
Mask could be a good topic for next session. I don't know if the intent is to keep it just to Photoshop or to do pixinsight and Photoshop.
What about 1 week with pixinsight, the other week with Photoshop?
I agree with that 100%.
Me too.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that if you were going to do something, because masks can get really complicated, so you just stick to one software, right?
Yep, and I'm okay with masks in Photoshop. I'm not great with masks in pixinsight, and as you saw, I had difficulty with my star mask. Now maybe it's just the pixinsight concept, but trial and error is the key to it. I don't know if Hytham is available to present masks, if he's comfortable presenting masks for one of the weeks, or if anyone else feels they have a grasp of Photoshop so well they even want to present Photoshop or have something to contribute. Otherwise, I could take it over, but I'm not adverse at all to having someone else present. I don't mind presenting myself, but I just want to make sure that the smartest person in regards to the masks is getting the info out there, because they're probably going to educate everyone the best.
Did Josh say that he had just spent how many learning 10 ways to do masks in Photoshop? Was that Josh earlier?
I did say that. I don't know if I'm the smartest person at masks, but I do spend a lot of time on them.
My mom says there's 152 different kinds of intelligence in the world. So, I'm sure that the 10 ways of doing masks that you know are at least as good as somebody else's 10 ways of doing masks.
Yeah, I don't think the focus should be on who is absolutely the best at doing the one particular item like masks, but I'm sure Josh has a lot of experience, and even if you do know how to do masks, you would be able to learn something from it, right? I know I would, especially, so I don't think
hey, Josh, will you do it or not, dude?
Yeah, right.
Easy.
I'd be happy to do it. I'm not available.
Yeah, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks up in Sequoia and Yosemite and Mono Lake and all that.
Sounds terrible.
Hey, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to go teach all these people how to take nighttime photographs. So that's what I'm going to be doing. You know Wally Paholka? He does that kind of stuff. I emailed him a few months back and said, "Hey Wally, I'm going to be doing a show in Sequoia, telling people how to do nighttime nightscape photography like you do. So you got any images I can use in my presentation?" And Wally writes back, "When are you going to be up there?" And I tell him, and he says, "Oh, I'm going to be up there at the same time." I figured, oh great, I get to present how to do this while Wally's up there showing what they really are. Yeah, that'll be nice. But we worked out a deal that he'll show the pretty pictures, and I'll tell the people how they take them. So that's my job. So I'll be gone for 2 weeks doing that.
All right. Well, we'll see you in 3 weeks then.
Yeah.
You have internet up there? Maybe we'll see you on cloudy nights.
I doubt it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I may be able to catch something on the phone, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be camping, RV and stuff like that. And then next Monday we'll be on Mono Lake itself with the tufa rising up and the big, Milky Way behind it and stuff like that. So maybe you'll see some of my pictures from that.
Look forward to them.
Let's see what else. Anyway.
Okay, I think Josh, did you say you're not available next week?
Not next week. I should be available the following week.
Hytham, do you think you're available next week?
Yeah, I don't think I'm around. I don't think I've got anything. Sorry, I don't think I've got anything going on, so I should be around.
All right. For now, we'll plan on doing masks and pixinsight next Sunday,
Okay.
and we'll discuss further. I'll discuss with Josh a little bit further. Just to make sure he's available for the following Sunday. Anyone have anything else?
We were going to talk about how to do individual communication or private communications, because some of this management stuff probably shouldn't be published up. Does anybody know how to do that on this?
Yes, I figured it out.
You figured it out? Okay.
I figured it out.
Get that out to us somehow or another along the way.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to send the Astro Imaging channel a private message that's not shared with anyone else, you just go to your Google Plus account, you type in, I believe it's called a text or a note. Let me check really quickly what they call it. They call it a text. So you click the text, you type in your message, and you pretty much just send it to the Astro Imaging channel, and then you mark it as private.
Okay.
So,
Are we able to set up an email account for the Astro Imaging channel so we can set up a Dropbox account for the Astro Imaging channel?
that's a good idea. I could probably.
Doesn't it have Google Drive associated to it? Because I thought once you created the channel, it creates an account, and then that creates a Drive account as well.
Let's see. I don't know if it did. I could look into either of them. I could probably Google Drive would be the best because it'll be integrated, and I could swear that I saw a Google Drive app attached to one of these, but maybe I was mistaken. But Google Drive, if there's any sort of integration, it might be a little bit better. Otherwise, I could probably set up another email.
If you go over to the apps that are sitting down on the left-hand side, or at least on my screen, I got a bunch of apps. The last one down says Google Drive.
Google Drive. Let's see.
And you click on it, it says opening Google Drive, connecting to Google. I don't know if that's mine or Astro Imaging channel.
Encountered a server error. Well, I got a server error, but I don't have Google Drive set up, so maybe that's my issue. But I'll look into that quickly.
Okay.
The only issue I have with Dropbox is every time I keep sharing stuff with people or getting invited to stuff, I find out my Dropbox is full. And I don't know if that happens to other people, but it's become annoying. And before I can work on stuff with other people, I have to delete stuff. And it's just become a little bit annoying for me.
What is Tim Smith in this organization, in this group? Tim Smith. I got an invitation to visit with Tim Smith and some others, and I'm wondering where it came from.
This
morning.
That was me.
Yeah.
There's to Tim. Where are you? There's a voice out there.
Scott, right here.
Scott? Okay.
Tim Scott,
And what was that about? What were we doing?
I was just trying to figure out some things for the EQ mod.
Oh,
and
okay.
Running that with, oh my gosh.
Sequence Generator Pro?
Yes.
Okay.
Just trying to get that figured out.
Yeah, I know Sequence Generator Pro pretty well, but I don't know EQ mod.
Yeah, it's thinking about just dropping the EQ mod altogether because I just can't get it running. And I think it has something to do with all my cables and stuff. So. We're going to try to get it going tonight. And in fact, Chris Madsen's online right now with me on this. We're going to run a session and see if we can't get it going.
Yeah, I wish I could help with that. I've never used EQ mod either.
He doesn't use EQ mod either, so I'm trying to.
Why do you use it? What's it do?
Places the hand controller.
Why do you? Hey, I'll tell you what. You don't need a hand controller with Sequence Generator Pro. It takes over everything pretty much by itself, and you go to sleep. What are you using a hand controller for, Tim?
No, it's EQ mod runs the Atlas mount.
Ah, okay. It's the communication link?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll control the guide speed. It's got a lot of different functions in it as well. You can control your meridian limits and like all kinds of stuff with it.
Okay. Okay. I don't need that on the Gemini or on the AP1200. So. Okay. And Robert, you made a comment partway through the show. I don't know if you realize this, Adam, but all the way along there was some side conversations running over in comments, and I didn't bother interrupting, and I don't think anybody wanted me to ask you questions about it, but there was a set of side conversations going about filters and stuff like that. And Robert wanted to ask you, what was it about TalkGab USA or something?
Actually, it's a website I'm always on. It's called astrogab.us. It's pretty much, it's a typical astronom, for astrophotographers, but what it's unique about it, it's got a live chat in it. So I'm usually in there all the time, and like a lot of the newer people, if they've got questions about processing or telescopes or something, you almost always have someone in there to answer your questions almost immediately instead of having to wait days to be able to get, an answer on a forum.
And that's Astro Gap, G-A-P?
Yeah.
I'm gonna type it right now.
B as in boy. Gab.
Gab. Gab, got it. Okay.
So it's just, it's another little site. I'm on there all the time. There's people from, I talked to a guy in Arizona, Virginia, a guy in Ireland, from all over the place that you're talking to people. So
Awesome. Thanks for the link.
So it's just something, I share with other Astro people. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
and I just want to say I appreciate you guys doing this because I'm just starting to learn pixinsight myself, and I just got the mono with the filters about a month ago, so I'm still learning how to use that too.
Yep.
And you had a DSLR previous, right?
Correct. So it's almost like starting new.
It's like
slight changes.
Yeah. I don't know, at like about a month and a half in after I got my mono camera, like I just hit this point and I was like, my images are a lot better. And I don't know how I got along with the DSLR for so long. So you're probably approaching that if you haven't already. But
Yeah, I mean that the NGC 6992 was only 11 subs of each. I tried to do 20, a minimum of 20, and just those 11 was 10 times better than the DLSR. So
yeah.
You guys are selling
We should
me
start a thread on We should start a thread on Cloudy Nights about which is better.
You'll start a war.
Don't go to the dark side. Stay with DSLR.
Okay.
Well, DLSRs are great for a beginner. I won't say anything bad about them. I mean, for a beginner, that's the ideal way to go. It's a
It's
great
definitely
way for
cost
learning.
effective.
Exactly.
I am terrified of giving up my field of view.
That's one of the things with the 690. It's a much smaller chip, and that's why I'm thinking of selling my William Optics 81 GTF and going with the Star 71, because it'll give me my field of view that my DLSR had on the William Optic 81.
Yeah.
At larger pixels, or pixel scale, I guess.
That's funny. Once you get a mono camera, it's just so much cheaper to just sell a telescope and buy a new one. The DSLR was the other way around.
Okay, everybody, I'm gonna see you. We'll see you next weekend.
Okay, bye. Good luck.
Good luck with your stuff with EQMod.
Yeah, bye, Tim. So are we in agreement that maybe Hytham is going to do masks in pixinsight next week?
I think so.
Well, that'd be great. And then, so the week after, maybe Josh for Photoshop? Is that right?
Most likely, I'll confirm with Josh. I don't want to speak for Josh.
Yeah, we'll chat. Somebody will be doing masks in Photoshop for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there anything that you guys wanted to focus on specifically in masks? Did you guys want it to be general mask creation, star masks, luminance masks?
I'd like to see star masks for my own personal.
Yeah, star masks would be awesome. Last week we pretty much focused on masks as well, but they were masks for HDR, so
Okay.
The processing was HDR, so it was larger scale masks. So
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Because I'm still trying to figure out how to do it, but one of the little tricks that I learned is because I hated the way creating masks in Photoshop, so I started creating the masks in pixinsight, convert it to a TIFF, and bring it into Photoshop and just use that as my mask. But I suck at Photoshop so bad, so I got to get that figured out before I teach you guys how I don't know how to do something.
Okay, so like the next 2 weeks, I think we're covered, right? And then so I'm gonna invite Scott Rosen to go over screen mask invert in Photoshop the week after that. So that would be August 3rd.
I will say, if Scott Rosen is presenting about masks the week after me, then I am definitely not presenting about masks.
No, the screen mask invert specifically, that specific function. He said he would do it, but he really needed to focus on one specific issue rather than a broad general. So I think it would be a great follow-up, Josh, if you just went over masks, right, in general, and star masks, and then Scott went into specifics of the inverted screen mask.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Scott's tutorial on that is amazing.
I know. It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. We have next week. We'll work on the following week, and if Scott would be interested, we'll have him for the next. We'll have to see. I did reach out to him in a PM, and he was busy for a couple weeks. So as long as that works out, we'll see.
Okay, well, I'll ask and then I'll let you know.
Sounds great.
All right, thanks, guys. I gotta get off here.
All right, guys.
Thanks. I thought this was awesome. Thank you so much for everybody participating.
No
All right,
problem.
gentlemen.
Thanks for coming.
Have yourselves a great night, gents.
You guys too. I'm going to stop the broadcast now.